Nelson Mandela obviously spoke out on all of the things that he saw during apartheid. That's the terminology for it. They said apartheid. I guess they was just like, we tired of you niggas and we want to stay apart from you. Can you imagine going to jail for 27 years and then getting out and seeing the niggas that had you in jail for 27 years and being like, hey, we good. I can't, but this man did, and that's why we talking about him today. We talking about Nelson Mandela. What up? What's good? What it do? It is your boy KJ Lee, and we are back with another episode of Black History I Never Learned. Today we're gonna take it to the south side of the motherland, South Africa. We talking about my boy Nelson Mandela. You probably learned a lot about my Nelson Mandela's achievements, but you didn't really know the whole story. So we're gonna go ahead and break it down from jump. Born in 1918 in a small village in South Africa, Nelson Mandela wasn't supposed to be regular. He was actually born in royalty. His father was chief of his village, so early on he learned leadership, he learned tradition, and he learned responsibility. He went to school, a nice school. He went to the Heatown Methodist College, then the University of Fort Hare, some of the few colleges that black people could actually attend. While at these schools, he spoke up. He talked about rights, radicalness, being treated certain ways, shit that was clearly unjust in his face, and he got put out. That was a pattern. He protested a lot. He got put out of school quick, early, and fast. So you could already tell it was a little revolutionary in his blood. Nigga had the jitterbug. Then he moved to Johannesburg. Now he's in a whole different world. With working different jobs, he actually finished his law degree, and he finished his regular degree and then began to study law. He eventually became one of the first black lawyers in South Africa. Now he sees a system, but he sees it from a different light. From this point, he began to protest. From this point, he continued to protest, and this caused for people to begin to see him. It caused for the government in England, the government in South Africa, to say that they not messing with him. The government in South Africa at the time is British people. It would be a lot like America's situation. Somebody showed up in the situation and said, hey, we don't like the people that's here. But America took everybody out and imported new people. These niggas, they weren't that bad, I guess you could say. They just showed up. They were like a roommate that showed up, but they weren't invited, like you just came home and one day they came and moved their furniture in and you was like, I guess, and you didn't really trip. And then they said, don't sit on my furniture. Basically, after coming in, they told all the black people there, you can't have this, you can't have this, you can't touch this, you can't have this. It's for Europeans only. Europeans only. It's kind of like saying whites and colors, isn't it? Ooh, it's the message. Isn't it crazy how we hold hands across the world in our hatred? Nelson Mandela obviously spoke out on all of the things that he saw during apartheid. That's the terminology for it. They said apartheid. I guess they was just like, we tired of you niggas and we want to stay apart from you, because that was the definition of it. And surprisingly, they were at these niggas' house. That's the craziest part of this to me. Showed up at these niggas' house and was like, look, it's ours now. Almost like America did Mexicans. Message. Next. 1960, Sharpsville Massacre. Police opened fire on one of the protests and killed protester. And so people began to get the message that it's clear. We can't peacefully protest with these people. We're going to have to go to war with them. During this, the rallies began to get bigger. The protests began to get bigger. And a leader began to rise. His name was Nelson Mandela. He was really smart. He was really courageous. And they didn't like that at all. And so they began to tell Nelson, you can't come to protests and gatherings. Like literally, it's like, hey, these niggas is about to have a party. You stay your ass at home. We find out you went to the party, it's gonna be problems. Sounds quite American, doesn't it? But apparently it's not an American thing. It's just a worldwide oppression thing. And as one of the most powerful leaders to the revolution and of the upspeaking of black people and the speaking up of Africans at the time, he was thrown in prison. 45 years old, they threw that man in jail. And they threw him in that jail for 27 years. They was like, we think he gonna die. He didn't. He was good. They was taking very good care of him. His fucking street credit rose through the roof. You think Martha Stewart did a flip. This nigga blew up when they put him in prison. He got so crazy that people around the world were like, hey, we gonna do that shit too. A lot of people in America was like, hey, we're going through that shit too. A lot of outspoken leaders, and we talking about the 60s and 70s. There were some very outspoken black people at that time in America. And so people there spoke out. People around the whole world spoke out. Lots of leaders began to speak out. A unified Africa is what he began to speak for. So the rest of Africa began to speak up. And so the rest of the world starts to apply pressure. They put sanctions, protests, global outrage. And guess what? Apartheid ended. 1990, Nelson Mandela walks out of prison. Not happy. All this happened while he was in jail. He was really on some mob boss shit, running a fucking revolution from jail. They was probably feeding him all type of lobster and amazing fish from out the ocean. Probably had a big old bunk. I bet you he was living real nice. How else do you survive 27 years and be like, I don't want to fight. We should not be at war. There should not be black domination. There should not be white domination. All people should live together. And he started preaching unity. And he pushed it and he pushed it and he pushed it. And he actually was what I would say is one of the first survivors of preaching unity. Dangerous stuff to do. Dangerous stuff to do. And he won all types of Nobel Peace Prizes and plenty of awards. But his message over everything was that I push peace, that I do forgive, and that I want unity over everything. They gave him 27 years in a cage. They gave his country, and he gave his country. They gave him 27 years in a cage, and he gave his country freedom. That's discipline, vision, and power. That's revolution. That's Black history. This is your boy, KJ Lee. And this has been another episode of Black History I Never Learned. The story of Nelson Mandela.